those who brought forward this motion, which we support. Mostly thanks, and I'd like to pay tribute to the whistleblowers who are in the gallery and those who are at home and elsewhere. It's actually one of the privileges of my job is that I get to meet whistleblowers while they're in the process of whistleblowing, get to work with them as they're trying to bring justice, do good in whatever sphere they're working in. And what's kind of interesting is I've met a whole bunch of whistleblowers at this stage working in different areas of the world or of kind of industry. And these aren't people who just to look at are extraordinary person. They look like just anybody else. There isn't a sign above their head saying heroic person, extremely brave person. These are kind of ordinary people who just take a decision to do the right thing, that they see wrong being done, be it springs inserted wrongly into children, be it operations, unnecessary operations being given to children, be it abuse taking place in our care homes, be it wrongdoing in the Irish prison service, be it abuse or mistreatment of animals and of workers at Dublin Zoo. They see things that are taking place that they know are wrong and decide, I'm going to do the right thing about this. And what opens up for them then, I think in some cases, isn't really what they expect. They're going to do the right thing, they make a protected disclosure, and then in many cases, they face very, very serious consequences in terms of their whole life. Very serious harassment. We've heard a lot correctly about Noel McGree, who has ended up being evicted with his family into homelessness, which flows from protected disclosures for which he was vindicated in the Irish prison service. But steadfastly, these people do the right thing. Many times we see on prime time or whatever, some major scandal break out that then becomes a major story in here and out of which some change begins to happen. I think many times the public doesn't know that starts, in most cases, with a whistleblower who calls out the wrongdoing. But these are the cases that we know of. In many cases, there's whistleblowers, there's people who've contacted me who've blown the whistle on various things and never get justice, who get harassed out of their workplace, get forced, never get what they have sought to do by speaking out. And the problem with the government's approach and the problem is with the government's amendment is basically to say, oh yeah, fair play to the whistleblowers, but everything is fine here in terms of legislation, when the reality of people's experiences is that everything is very far from being okay. I want to briefly just recount one whistleblower's experience who's in the gallery, Margot Hannon. Margot was a healthcare assistant. She made a protected disclosure to the HSE regarding serious adult safeguarding failures, breaches of national infection control guidelines, deficiencies in end-of-life care and communication issues. That resulted in a 3-year investigation which was not independent of the HSE, and at the end of which the HSE failed to publish or provide recommendations from the approximately 500-page report. Throughout this period, she experienced stonewalling, reprisals, and ultimately constructive dismissal. She made a second protected disclosure to HICWA anonymously regarding serious concerns about suspected gerontophilia and poor infection control practices by a nurse. HICWA found prima facie evidence that wrongdoing may have occurred and referred the matter to the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Ireland. However, the NMBI incorrectly refused to treat the matter as a protected disclosure solely because it had been submitted anonymously. They now wish to treat it as a fitness to practice complaint, which would require disclosure of her identity. The NMBI requested consent to release her name to protect the nurse's right to fair procedures, quote, as required by law. This appears to conflict with the spirit and intent of current protected disclosures legislation, as well as the EU whistleblowing directive. To date, no investigation has been carried out, and the nurse in question continues to have unsupervised access to non-verbal patients with dementia. She says that her strongest wish is that healthcare workers be enabled to make protected disclosures anonymously, including through a solicitor, as is standard practice in other jurisdictions. Just finally, I want to take a moment to correct the record in relation to one point I made with regard to the use of funds by Dublin Zoo to build an extension to the zoo director's house. To clarify, these funds came from unrestricted funds, not a public fundraising appeal. I stand over all the other remarks I made in relation to abuse of animals and harassment of workers at Dublin Zoo. This is about whistleblowers, and I'd like to thank the whistleblowers who bravely brought these important matters of public concern out into the open at great personal cost.